You won't believe it, like 7 people randomly PayPal'd us money.
Coming to AI, as far as we know, big MNCs are going after AI.
The most value is getting created in AI is something that was not possible before.
You also mentioned that Ashneer Grover was one of your first investors in Vested Finance. So, how did you meet him and what was the entire conversation like?
He was actually wanted to do what we were doing, and so that's what started off the conversation. Met him in India with my co-founders, and that led to the first sort of check.
Were from an engineering background and then you did investment banking in JP Morgan Chase. So this shift from engineering into finance world, what motivated you to do that?
I had no idea, honestly, no idea about finance, investment banking, no nothing.
Hello everyone, my name is Khushi Parekh. I'm chairperson of DJSCE E-Cell and welcome to season 3 of E-Cell podcast. We have an esteemed guest, Mr. Viram Shah. He's CEO and co-founder of Vested Finance. He had graduated from DJSCE in 2014 and he's from Electronics and Telecommunication uh, department. So welcome Viram.
Thanks, Khushi. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back here after, I guess, 10 years. So, excellent. And it's great to see that you guys are doing this because when we were here, there was no ESL and there was no podcast. So, excellent. Kudos to you guys for starting this.
So, before we dive in your entrepreneurial journey, I wanted to ask you one of your best memories in DJ Sangvi and how it shaped you and in your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, man. Best memories, huh? I mean, there are a lot, honestly. Like these 4 years are a phenomenal time in just one's life. I think in my life, especially, it was excellent. I don't think I could pick one. Right from all the festivals that we were a part of, I was very active and learned a lot in the cultural festival, the technical festival. I don't know if all of them are still the same, or I think they got combined into one later on. But that was one key part of it beyond the classroom. I think within the classroom, just I honestly used to really like some of the subjects very much, and so enjoyed learning them. I somewhere I felt that I was in EXTC, but I loved coding and I realized that after going into EXTC. But I used to like the coding subjects a lot, and the friends. I mean, we are still, all of us, are in touch, and it's been amazing to see the journeys that they have all gone through. But during that time, everybody is here on a day-to-day basis meeting them. That was I think one of the core memories for me. And then eventually you get into all of the placements and thinking through all of that. I think that is quite interesting. The vivas, the stress around it, that's quite unique. Seeing the result on the board, I think that's an experience that is also very, very unique. So it's just excellent. I mean, I have very fond memories the last or those 4 years that I was here.
So, you were from an engineering background and then you did investment banking in JP Morgan Chase. So, this shift from engineering into finance world, what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I realized that I liked coding a lot, and somehow a lot of the roles post EXTC, if you want to do core EXTC, are not really coding related. And so I thought that, okay, let me see if I can do something on the business side of things. The other aspect was also, while I was working at all of the festivals here, I was also involved on the business side of the festival, so more on the sponsorship side. And then I come from a very entrepreneurial family, so all of those three things combined, I thought that let's see if I can do something non-tech. And luckily at that point, where I ended up at JP Morgan, who had come to campus to recruit. It was just a shot in the dark. And I'm sure a lot of fourth year folks can relate कि मतलब देख लेते हैं कि क्या होता है. Let's sit for it and see what happens. And before I knew it, I was selected there. I had no idea, honestly, no idea about finance, investment banking, no nothing. But I thought, it's a company that is interesting, and finance is something that was always fascinating to me from the outside. So I thought, let's give it a shot. And yeah, the rest is somehow history.
So, what was your role there and what did you learn from it?
So I was basically part of there's this team called the CRG team there, and it's an investment banking role, but a middle office investment banking role. So you don't end up working directly with the clients, at least in the beginning. What happens there is you are sort of assigned to one of the global functions that JP Morgan has. So I was part of the Hong Kong function, and then you get a sector. So I had the telecom, media, and tech sector that was assigned to me. And basically, what you have to do is, as part of investment banking, essentially, it's that you go and pitch to companies to go raise money or to do an IPO or to raise debt, all of those things. So you help the team prepare sort of a model or a presentation, an overall pitch to the client, and then once the client is converted, then you get to work on actually the transaction itself. So it was fascinating. I mean, and from there actually the seed for Vested was planted, so it has a big impact on my life. But apart from that, just working at a large organization teaches you a work ethic which otherwise you never learn, right? If you go directly into a small company, uh, there are a lot of sort of flexibilities that are available to you, but here working at a large organization you have to follow certain rules, processes, and all of that. So for me, it was a great foundation, and I always recommend it to everybody for somebody wanting to get started. This is an excellent foundation because you've seen the worst. Like we used to have long working hours. Like it used to be morning 10 to sometimes night 12, 1, 2. But the team was excellent. You're working with very accomplished folks. The work was excellent, and then after that, once you've done that, you feel like you've done everything, right? Then you feel like, okay, matlab, bring it on. Whatever you have, throw it at me. I can handle it. So I think from that point of view, it prepared me well also to go ahead.
And then you went on to do MBA in Haas, UC Berkeley, UC California, if I remember. And what was your thought? Like, did you want to settle in US or did you go for networking
Yeah.
as such?
So the thought was, now, I mean, while you're in DJ, I'm sure you all will realize that everybody just somehow leaves and goes to the US. And at that point, I was one of the few who was still in India, and I was like, what am I doing? But that apart, I always wanted to get global sort of exposure and global education. And since I had gone directly into working, I never looked at sort of the masters kind of option, which a lot of folks end up taking, and which is a good option as well. For me, it was okay. Can I do more on the business side of things now that I'm going down the business path? And so post working, MBA is the typical option, right? Uh, and so that was kind of always there back of the mind. So in fact, I'd even prepared for the GMAT while I was at college, and given it while I was here itself, because somewhere along the down the road I thought I will use it. And yeah, so after kind of 2.5 years at JP Morgan, I was thinking through, okay, how do I get this global exposure? Let me try and apply to a few of these schools, and somehow Berkeley and Haas worked out, which was like my sort of dream college, because longer term I always knew I wanted to start something. I wanted to be in the tech space, and this being in the Bay Area was a very good school to go to, and luckily it worked out. The thought was always to figure out a path to starting something and coming back. So I think going into it, I was pretty clear that I wanted to come back to India, and the tech ecosystem here is just booming. There are a lot of opportunities. So that thought was always there. I never knew when it would work out. It was, if you see my essays, it was kind of the medium term plan to come back. Short term was to stay there. Uh, but short term ended up happening with Vested. So you never know. But somewhere, if you have an idea in your mind, then you will find a path to that idea working out, whatever it is. For me, it was coming back and getting involved into startups and tech, which happened via Vested. But whatever it is, it will happen that way.
So, how Vested was born and what was the thought behind it and how did you start it?
So it started, now it's been 6 years, and started while I was at college there. So an MBA gives you a lot of time to do things. The 2 years, you have plenty of time to study and pursue other sort of passions. And so for me, the thought was, okay, I have 2 years. Can I use that to see if whatever I want to do in the longer term was starting something? Can I use that to start a company, and then we'll see what happens. And then what we went, so I had, along with that, I had a classmate also who was also on the similar path. Like we both sort of then started discussing ideas, and within that we focused on, okay, what were pain points that we have felt in our life before, what are problems that we faced, because if one of us has faced it, there might be others that who faced it as well, right? So in fact, I always say this, my first love, the first entire year I was working on electric vehicles. I was very much hell-bent on starting something there. And in fact, I still have the domain name also registered, and I wanted to do like a electric vehicle sharing company. Realized that I wanted to do it in India. So realized that while being there, it's a very operationally heavy business, and I can't run it while I'm in the US and run an India company. And so then after the first year, sort of gave up that dream and then went to do an internship, and then again started thinking, okay, what are ideas that or pain points that we've sort of faced in our previous life. And that was when this JP Morgan pain point came about, which I was covering a lot of global companies while I was there. And so that time also I wanted to invest in them, and I've gone to my broker here and he told me ki, nahi ho payega, chhod do ye. And that had stayed with me somewhere. It's like, why is it just not possible for somebody from India when in the US I saw all my classmates having international companies as their part of their portfolio. So then we thought, okay, let's see if this is something that works out. And then we did a bunch of experiments, and we can talk about those as well. But kind of that's how it started. Our thinking was, so we started this in I think January, and we were going to graduate in May. So the thinking was ki yaar, if we are able to raise a little bit of money in the beginning and able to get some customers in, then we'll go full time, because if you're going internationally, you have student loans and all of those things. So taking that risk becomes a bit of a challenge. And so we wanted to use that second year to validate. If we were able to validate that there is a need for it, then we'll take that risk. And yeah, so we raised our first 300,000 while we were in college, got a few customers on board. So that was it. Off to the races. Then we were like, let's do this full time. And just a year later, COVID hit, and then we were like, okay, was this the right decision or not? But no, in hindsight, it turned out well, and yeah. So then we just all of us went into it full time.
So, what were the experiments you conducted to understand what's the need of?
Yeah. So we did a couple of things. One is, and this is, I tell a lot of folks who are trying to start, is that try to get customer feedback as soon as possible. Don't wait for building the entire product, spend a year doing it, and then you're just like, when you launch it, there's nobody, right? So one of the things that we did was we put out a waitlist landing page. We just created a landing page and ran Facebook ads against it to get leads. So people would see. So it was just a simple, hey, you can now invest in US stocks from India. If you're interested in it, leave your email here. And we got 200 300 such signups. Did not expect it. And then most people leave it at that. But again, the advice there is go deeper into it. So what we did was we reached out to each of those individuals who had signed up just to understand why are you doing this, right? What is prompting you to leave your email on such a landing page? And through that, realize that, oh, the need is actually so strong that people have tried to do it in different ways. They have tried to invest via their family who's living in the US. Through that, we also got our first few angel investors. Actually, we were just like calling up people, and some of them were founders in India who thought this was an excellent idea and they wanted to give us money. So that hard work led to funding, which was not expected. But you never know what works out if you're hustling and if you're sort of dedicated to it. So that was one of the experiments. So landing page, waitlist, calling everybody up to understand why they signed up. The second thing which we wanted to do was to go one step further and validate, is the need strong enough? And so one of the things we did was we created a spreadsheet. So because I was in the US, I was able to open a brokerage account there. Right? Actually, for the uninitiated, Vested is a platform that allows you to invest internationally from India. So that's the context. And so because I was there and my co-founders were from the US, we could create a brokerage account. And so we created a spreadsheet. We put like 10 companies in that, the stock price and a bunch of financial details. And again, ran a Facebook ad saying, hey, if you want to invest in the US, we will invest on your behalf and we'll give you your money back in the next 6 months. Because there was no way to open a brokerage account then. And you won't believe it, like 7 people randomly PayPal'd us money they did not know us, they did not know who Viram is, no nothing. But the need was just so strong. They were like, take my $500, invest it into Apple, Google, Facebook, and give me the money back 6 months later. And so that was again another validation, which was that the need is strong enough to be able to, that people would go through hoops to be able to invest, right? I've always, and this was one of my learnings from the MBA, was that, see, there are a lot of ideas that people can start. But there is this framework of a muscle builder versus a painkiller. A muscle builder is basically, you go to the gym, you take protein, and it helps build your muscle. It's optional, right? You may or may not take the protein. But when you're in so much pain that you have to take a painkiller, is the idea that you should work on, right? It's not something that, oh, if I need it, I will do it, fine. But that's a very difficult thing to sell to somebody. But if it's something that they've thought of and they've tried and not been able to do, it's a very burning pain. Building a painkiller is what really is an excellent idea, and it'll help your odds of success much more. So that framework, we wanted to validate whether this is a muscle builder or painkiller. For a lot of people, this was a painkiller. They've thought about it, they've tried it, could not do it, and they went through the hoop of sending money to a random person on the internet. That means that this has been a valid pain, and so then we were like, okay, let's go down this path.
You've also mentioned that Ashneer Grover was one of your first investors in Vested Finance. So, how did you meet him and what was the entire conversation like?
I mean, it was this waitlist calling. So he was one of the waitlist folks, and yeah, it was just a random call, and I mean, he was like, if I was not doing what he was doing then, he was actually wanting to do what we were doing, and so that's what started off the conversation. Met him in India with my co-founders, and that led to the first sort of check. But along with that, we also, through our network within Haas, also got introduced to a few investors. But the important thing here, again, just insight or learning that we had was, you can't expect to go to somebody and be like, okay, this is my idea, give me money. It never works that way. You have to warm them up over time, right? And so you have to really start talking to people who you want investments or money from, maybe 4 to 6 months in advance, and tell them, okay, this is my idea, this is what I want to do. Because if you've already run a startup and exited, it's fine that you have the proof that, okay, you can do this. But otherwise, why would somebody believe that you have the capability to run this, right? So one of the things we learned was, we spoke to people immediately. It was just like, okay, this is what we are working on, just letting you know, and this is our background, that's it. 2 months later, share an update again. This is the progress that we've made so far, since we last met. Again, later start, and then eventually 6 months later, when you actually need the money, is when they would be warm enough to be able to raise the money, right? So it's important to build your reputation, show progress, to then get to your first investment. A lot of people think that, okay, I'm going to start tomorrow, start fundraising, and a round will be done. But that's typically, for first time founders, is not how that works. So you should build a track record. That's what we sort of realized. I mean, while working on it, we realized that, okay, this is what we have to do, and so then that eventually led us to our first few investors. You mentioned that our COVID hit and you were thinking that, is this something right we've done? Yeah. So, like, have you faced crisis invested like during COVID or after that, which led you to thinking that? I mean, I think we face every crisis. Touch wood, I don't know actually, but every possible different scenario, I think we've seen. COVID was one of them. Then post that, because we're in a regulated space, regulations change. So how do you adapt to that? The inability to raise money at a certain point in time, spending too much, then backtracking, all of those things. So it's been, I think, if you're wanting to start a company, in any company, I don't think it's necessarily a tech company. I think one of the key things that has helped me, and I think might help others as well, is just to, by default, expect that there will be crisis. I think it's a lot of it is to just train your mind. If you train your mind that, okay, XYZ, write down all the things that can go wrong, and they will go wrong. It's not like, if they've not gone wrong, then they will go wrong later. But if you train your mind from that point of view, then if a challenge will not feel like, okay, it's the end of the world. It will feel like, okay, this is another thing I need to deal with. What are the possible solutions? And then you move on. So that's what helped me. And there have been all sorts of different challenges. If you could mention one, which you thought, this is the end, I think, right now. There was one point when we were out to raise our Series A, and we had really gone into the mindset of growth at all costs, and at that point in time, so a lot of your fundraising capabilities also depend on the global macro environments, like how is the environment in general, are people investing into startups. And as we were going into our fundraise, the macro environment changed. Everybody became very bearish in a way that they suddenly were not wanting to take high risk investments, and people wanted to there was a lot of uncertainty. Now, at that point in time, with this high cost structure that we had developed, uh, if we did not raise, then we would have to think, okay, what are the steps that we have to take? So uh, at that point, I realized that the best thing that one should do is to be able to first stand on their own feet, and to, I mean, standing on their own feet, the thing is here is to become profitable, right? Not be sort of loss making. And so that learning then took us 24 months from there on to now we are profitable this year, and now it just feels completely different. But at that point, of course, we did raise, but we had to, at that point we had to raise at whatever terms the investor was giving us, right? It wasn't, you cannot command your own terms, you don't have any leverage in that discussion, right? And so I promised to myself, and I told my wife then also that please remind me if I forget that, I don't want to ever be in a situation where your back is completely against the wall, where you can't really say anything, where you want to get better valuation or you want to get better terms, you can't do anything, you just have to take whatever you get, right? So I think that was a learning, and we've learned since then, and now in a much better situation.
You've also mentioned that in HDFC Securities, you had approached them in 2019 and they were reluctant, and now you've come and collaborated with them. So, what does it talk about timing? Because timing is very much important in every aspect, right time, right people, right things to work out. So, if you could give a gist on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one overall from an idea and opportunity point of view, timing is important where you want to be ideally just early to a market that is picking up. But that is very difficult to time often. And but if you can just keep that in mind, the other learning from this entire scenario was that patience is also equally important. Like if you've lost an opportunity, and this we had lost in 2019 because we were just not ready with our product at that point. If you're in business long enough, and if you have the right reputation, and if you sort of build the right relationships, an opportunity will come your way, and at that point in time you should be ready to grab it, right? And so the opportunity came to us again 5 years later, and at that point we had an excellent product, we had great relationships, we were patient and were in business, we hadn't shot ourselves in the foot till then, and then the door opened. And so now once the door opens, of course you have to execute and do and get it done. But the biggest learning was stay in business. If you stay in business, you will get lucky and build a reputation, build a character in the market that is solid. Think long term, and something will fall your way. And yeah.
You've made teams across borders, US and India. So, what are the qualities which you look while, picking the right people for your team?
I mean, the team is by far the most important part of building a company, and if you have the right team, you will be able to weather a lot of challenges. And thankfully now our team has sticked with us through ups and downs, and I'm very very grateful for that. Some of the things that I have, or we in general at Vested have also looked for is, I mean, number one for us is just overall cultural fit. There's this saying that aptitude can be learned, right? But attitude is requires a brain transplant. You can't really shift somebody's attitude. It's neurologically wired. It takes a lot of time. So attitude is essentially what we look for. And now within that, we have identified some key areas that work well for us. One is an ownership mindset. So we are a small team. There are a lot of things that you have to do. So somebody who can, without instructions, come in and get something done is very important. And how we look for that in a person is, we typically look at in the past, what have they done in the past, have they done certain aspects that would show us that okay, this person can take ownership, right? And it can be as simple as organizing something in college as well, right? Like those are simple things, and as you become older, of course there are different areas of work we look at, but ownership becomes an important aspect in a small company. The other is just a hunger to learn, and that is something I often look at in interviews, and I don't think I've mentioned publicly, but just how often do they talk about the word learn, and how eager are they to sort of why they want to join Vested, how eager are they to learn, how eager have they been in the past. I think that just shows, the capability to absorb things as it comes their way, and that's been something super important. What else?
Do you look for degree like, some IIT, IM tag or something?
So it's, in my mind, it is a data point that shows that you have taken ownership and gone above and beyond. So there could be, not necessarily have a IIT tag, but there could be another way where you've displayed that. So that is fine, equally fine. It's not necessary that only this is needed. Uh, if not this, then somewhere else there needs to be some display of going above and beyond. I think that's what I look for in general.
So, like for example, there are certain engineering students who have started early right now. Like they don't have what right expertise and what we can say the exposure right now. Like they have not even gone into uh, industry level and worked there, and they've just started their company right now. And then there are people who are seasoned, who've done their MBA and all. So, what would be your recommendation? You've also done your MBA from Haas. So, like, would you recommend someone to do MBA right now or no?
If it's particularly an MBA, I would suggest working for a bit and then doing it, because then you get a lot of value out of it. Now that working could be your own startup also. Like I had batchmates who had done their startups and then okay, it reached a certain scale, but they realized that this is what it is. Now an education will help them further go to the next level. But if you've done that already and then you come to an MBA, your learning or the takeaways are next level. Then you can really go in and do a lot afterwards if you want. So there's no, in terms of when to start a company, I feel like there is no right time. There are thousand ways to heaven. So whatever works for that individual works for them best. Practical knowledge is important. So the sooner you can get it, it is better for sure. Then you should also know when to give up if it's not working. If it's not working, don't get too tied or attached to it, too emotional to it. Take the experiences that just taught you, move on. Either work at another company, which is fine. When you're graduating in your 20s, there's a lot of time to do different things, and that's not a bad option as well. And then if you want to go study further, even studying further is not necessary. It does help you widen your perspective, especially at a global level. But there are plenty of successful people who haven't done an MBA or done future studies, right? It's not a set path at all. It's just one should find their own path and see what resonates with them. What kind of, somewhere you will get a calling from within. This is what feels right for me. Do that, and just whatever you do it 100%. That's it. Nothing. Yeah, short.
And what were the, what can say, mistakes which you had done, while building your startup and which we should avoid as a first time founders?
there are there are lots of, one of the things that I always used to think is that there is only a set path of a company, right? Like you have to start a company, raise a round of funding, build, then go on and raise your series B, C, D, E. I think that over time I have realized is not necessary. Not every company or not every idea is meant for the kind of fundraising journey that you read in the media. But that does not make that company any less better or any less successful because you're not reading about the fundraise journeys, right? So I think that was one learning for me, is that there are plenty of different kinds of investors that you can tap into, not necessarily just typical venture capital investors. There are angel investors, there are family offices. So there are companies that also do investments. So the fundraise landscape is quite wide. The second learning was also, you should really think through whether you want to raise money also or not. Because I always thought that, okay, this is the only path. There is no other path. Like, you don't read about anything else. But there are actually multiple paths. And in fact, I always talk about this happiness adjusted valuation, right? If you're taking on more and more investors, it may not necessarily mean that you're happier as a founder. uh, in fact, it comes with a lot of pressure. You're on a constant treadmill to go from one to the other because people want their money back, right? In fact, if you're able to run a company without needing a lot of money or any money at all, that actually might be more satisfying than going down this path of which we keep reading in the media, right? So knowing that you have different investor options, knowing that you have different paths that you can take, which may not necessarily be the same path that you keep reading about. I think those two things were learnings for me. The other was just learning how to read people becomes more and more. I've made plenty of mistakes in the hiring side, on the hiring side of things, and you become better as you grow as a founder, leader, and so that becomes important. What else? I think I talked about how we went down the over growth path. Now it's more profitability, balancing profitability with growth, and yeah, I guess that's it.
And one more thing I wanted to ask was the environment, like when, for example, if a founder, like a student wants to say to their parents, "Now I want to start my startup," and then there's their reaction, they'll be like, "No, you do a job first. No, you have to do this all." And, that kind of, what do you say, dims the spirit or the energy the founder has towards his idea. So, what was it for like you while you had talked about your idea?
Yeah, that's a good point actually. And I was lucky enough that I had support from the beginning of family too, because you need that support. It's a tough journey, and just to try to go against family and then try to fight all the battles that you have to for starting a company makes it much more difficult. So I feel like I mean I would just tell all the parents that possibly might listen to this that please do support the child if they want to start something. And then of course if it doesn't work, then always I always still take their guidance into account in terms of where we are heading, and that always helps. But you do need that supportive environment. I think nowadays it is becoming better, where people now, I mean, startups are known enough that if you tell a family member, they won't ask like, "A startup kya hota hai?" So they will know ki what you're doing, but they may not know what exactly you're working on. If you're doing some kind of, I don't know, AI robotics startup, that may not work out. But I think overall people know startups, so that should help. But it is important to get their support.
Yeah. uh, Coming to AI, as far as we know, big MNCs are going after AI. There are small AI wrappers right now, startups, which are like doomed to be failing because they are AI wrappers.
Yeah.
What is your point towards AI, and how do you keep up with new technologies coming in, and how do you incorporate it in your company?
It is, I mean, it is very important to just keep a pulse on what new is happening. And in fact our company started because there was a advancement in technologies on the US side, where now there was fractional shares that were available, so you could buy $1 of Amazon shares instead of having to invest fully $3,000 to buy one share. So that technology advancement was what led to our company being possible now, because somebody from India buying an Amazon share for 2.5 lakhs just would not have been possible, right? So you in fact should keep a close eye on technology shifts, because they give you opportunities to build companies on top of it. And AI, of course, is one such similar such shift that's happening, and a big one. And I mean, there is a lot of froth also in terms of what's valuable. Uh, I would just suggest to keep a mindset of finding problems and not force fitting, like not going by, okay, I want to do something in AI. Let me see what solutions are out there. Find the problem, and if AI is a fit to that problem, then use it as a solution, not necessarily just as a forcing function. For us, we look at what other opportunities does AI open up, which otherwise we would not have been able to do. So one of the new features that we've launched recently is you can text into sort of a software that we've developed and build your own portfolio just based on text. So you can say that, okay, create a portfolio with Indian CEOs that have a return on capital of 15% plus, and it will create like a portfolio based on that. So that now would never have been possible without AI, right? Or we now do kind of a analysis of each person's portfolio and give it to them in terms of, okay, what are your strengths, weaknesses? Again, something which would not have been possible without AI. So the most value is getting created in AI is something that was not possible before. I was recently reading about a company which is in the mining space. So they've created a tool, and the problem that they found out was a lot of these mining companies spend 80% of their money on finding a new mine. Now that's a massive cost, right? Earlier what they would have to do is go to each site and figure out, okay, whether this is an area where which we can mine. And now using AI, they built a tool that helped them reduce that 80% cost by 30%, which is a big saving, right? So now something that was not possible before AI is now possible, right? So if you put that hat on and find things in that space, I think then there is plenty of opportunities now with this shift in technology.
That's very interesting take towards it. Because right now, while doing assignments, we use AI.
Yeah. I'm sure. it is unavoidable.
Exactly. So we just thinking that obviously now we incorporate in our education system. Why not, in our ideas as well?
Yeah.
Also, one more thing I wanted to ask that the company which you built is like basically we're getting better returns from the if we are investing in US stocks, right? So do you think the tables will be turned somewhere for India as well, like global companies investing here and they getting a greater value out of their shares?
That is very much what we want to do. So we sort of want to do both sides. So if you're in India, want global assets, or if you're globally living outside and want Indian assets, you should be able to get those as well, because the next 10-15 years are going to be very interesting in India. And so we've just now recently launched for folks living in the US to be able to access India, the reverse platform as well. So yeah, both ways. I mean, great companies exist worldwide. It's just that there are no paths for people to invest. So that's what we want to solve for.
Apart from vested finance, do you have any startup idea which you would like to work on if you had ample time for that?
Let's see. I mean, one of the things I've really wanted to work on is just so a lot of financial products in India are built for the top 5%. There are no products being built for people who are in the, let's say, 50%, the middle 50% or so. Their needs are very different. Their needs may not be to invest in the US stock market. Their needs are more, how do I make sure that I have enough insurance to cover myself if I go through a tough time from a health perspective? How can I get a loan in a manner which I don't have to go to a loan shark and pay a very high interest? So their needs are very different, and nobody's really solving for that. So I have always felt if I had time, I want to build, because even their way of interacting with technology is not how we interact with a phone. They don't, like, their primary mode of interaction may be voice. It may not be how our apps are designed. So it needs to be thought from a grounds up perspective, and it's a big market. So yeah, if somebody wants to build that, then I'd be more than happy to help.
And your final message for the entrepreneurs or the students who are still trying to figuring out, like us, you know, what would you think? Like, what piece of advice would you give to when you were as a college student?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One is just to start. If you have something, try to get sort of practical knowledge, and the sooner you start and the sooner you get practical knowledge, the better it is. Don't wait for that brilliant light bulb moment. There is no such light bulb moment. Look at the past problems that you've seen, focus on problems, fall in love with the problem first. The solutions then can be figured out. Don't go the other way, which is, okay, I have this thing I want to develop, is there even a problem around it? I think that's the biggest issue, where I find people, they've learned something cool in class and now they want to use that to build a company, but don't know what's the underlying problem actually that's being solved. So really focus on problems. If you find something, then go for it. Don't delay, and don't be like, just start small incremental steps is how to go about it. And then, dream big. I think that's the biggest issue amongst a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in India, is just we are not dreaming big enough. We are not sort of, we somehow restrict ourselves by by putting ourselves down कि ये नहीं हो सकता है. But just dare to dream big, and if you really go wide and big, then somewhere you will end up at a stage where you would have not thought that you can get here. So I think, yeah, those are the couple of things. That.
So I guess that's it for us today. Yes. So see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.